أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله سبحان الله الحمد لله رب العالمين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Maybe this is a bit too high. Okay, let's try it this way. My brother Sadiq, we're going to have to start doing a check on me as well before these broadcasts, mashallah, to make sure that everything is sitting right. Let us begin with today's broadcast. I begin in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. I bear witness that there is nothing worthy of worship except Allah and Allah alone, that Allah has no partners, no associates. There is nothing and no one comparable to Allah. And I bear witness that the Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah is his last divinely sent messenger and the seal of the prophethood. Amin. We want to welcome our friends and guests in South Africa, the United States, and around the world to this week's edition of A Conversation with El-Hajj Mauri Saalakhan. I am pleased to be your host, coming to you once again through the Salam Media platform out of Johannesburg, South Africa. Salam Media is an online portal for humanitarian journalism. Today, I would like to have a one-on-one with my faith community. I want to share some thoughts on the challenges ahead in 2021. We are now 3 days into the new year, according to the dominant calendar in the Western world and in much of the rest of the world. I began this discussion last Friday at Masjid Bilal in Richmond, Virginia. I served as guest khatib for Jummah, as I do the first Friday of each month. And this was the topic of presentation for the Jummah. And what I want to do now is continue on this Salam Media platform in concert with the motto of the network. We don't just report the news, we advise you on what you can do about it. With Allah's permission and help, I'm going to try to provide a little nasiha, some sincere advice on some of the burning issues of our time. On Friday, I began the Jummah khutbah with a passage from the Quran. Actually, it's the last surah or chapter of the Quran known as An-Nas, or humanity. The verse reads in Arabic, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. In translation, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. In the Lord of humankind, the King of humankind, the God of humankind, from the evil of the sneaking whisperer who whispers into the heart of humankind from among the jinn and humankind. As I did with the khutbah in Richmond, Virginia this past Friday, I want to outline basically 3 areas of test. Three areas of challenge for Muslims throughout the world. The first is this global pandemic that has the entire world in its grip. A pandemic that some of us prefer to refer to as fake news, as not real, as something that's just made up. Once again, I want to share part of the fatwa that was issued by an organization a jurist, a Muslim jurist organization. But before I do, let me just say something about this pandemic, the climate that surrounds the pandemic, especially as it pertains now to these vaccines that have been unveiled and this new strain that has now grabbed the attention of virologists and epidemiologists and political leaders and all over the world. In fact, from what I understand, according to reports, this new strain has made its appearance in India and also in South Africa. On the 2nd of this month that we have just entered, on the second day, the morning of the second day of this month, according to Johns Hopkins University, there were 20,135,182 COVID-19 cases in the United States of America, with 347,870 deaths. This was on the morning of the second day of this new year. We have now crossed the 350,000 death mark. Many hospitals in the United States are now said to be, quote, at the brink of catastrophe, end quote. Los Angeles County is now reporting a coronavirus death, just Los Angeles County alone, every 10 minutes. And I can assure our viewers and listeners that the black and brown victims are disproportionately represented in these numbers. I want to share with you an article that just came out this morning based on a appearance that Dr. Fauci had on one of the Sunday morning talk shows. This just happened today. This is an NBC News report. Fauci pushes back on Trump. COVID death numbers are real. Now, I want my brothers and sisters within my Muslim fold who are deniers of this reality to pay close attention to this article. It reads, Dr. Anthony Fauci earlier today on Meet the Press pushed back on President Donald Trump's false claims that the U.S. coronavirus death toll is exaggerated. The numbers are real, Fauci, one of the nation's foremost infectious disease experts, said during an interview on NBC's Meet the Press. Again, this took place just this morning. Fauci said, quote, we have well over 300,000 deaths. We are averaging 2,000 to 3,000 deaths per day. He told the hosts of the show, Chuck Todd, quote, all you need to do, Chuck, is go into the trenches, go into the hospitals, go into the intensive care units and see what is happening. Those are the real numbers, real people, and real deaths. Fauci's interview came in response to Trump tweeting. That's President Trump. He tweeted the following, quote, "The number of cases and deaths of the China virus is far exaggerated in the United States because of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's ridiculous method of determination compared to other countries, many of whom report purposely, very inaccurately, and low." Brothers and sisters, I don't know if you heard this rather disoriented tweet as shockingly clear as I did, but I want to share it with you again. What President Trump said in his tweet. He said, quote, "The number of cases and deaths of the China virus is far exaggerated in the United States because of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's ridiculous method of determination compared to other countries." Now, what does he then say about what other countries have to say about their numbers? He says, "Many of whom report purposely, very inaccurately, and low," end quote. So what is the president suggesting here? That the CDC in the United States should also report purposely, inaccurately low? Is this the suggestion the president of the United States is making here? I mean, it's really something to think about. The article goes on to say, Trump responded to Fauci by tweeting, quote, something how Dr. Fauci is revered by the mainstream media as such a great professional, having done, they say, such an incredible job. Yet he works for me and the Trump administration, and I am in no way given any credit for my work. Gee, could this just be more fake news? End quote. Trump has spent most of the pandemic spreading misinformation about the virus and trying to downplay its effects. December was the most deadly and infectious month of the pandemic in America. More than 77,000 people died, and 6.4 million contracted the virus over the month. According to an NBC News analysis, overall more than 350,000 people have died from the virus, and almost 20.5 million people have been infected. And that's just in the United States alone, the epicenter of this pandemic. Fauci said on Sunday that the pandemic could and likely will get worse in the next couple of weeks, or at least maintain this terribly high level of infections and deaths in the coming weeks as America feels the full effects of travel during the Christmas holiday. This is what happens. It's terrible. It's unfortunate, but it was predictable, he said. Rather than sit back and throw up our hands and say, oh my goodness, it's getting worse, we need to double down on some of the fundamental things that we talk about all the time. The uniform wearing of masks, the physical distancing, and the avoiding of congregate settings and crowds, particularly indoors. End quote. Now that 2 vaccines have been approved by the Food and Drug Administration for emergency use, there are concerns that the country is not ramping up its vaccination program fast enough. While Fauci admitted the country is somewhat behind, he preached patience as the program ramps up. No excuses, he said. We are not where we want to be, but hopefully we'll pick up some momentum and get back to where we want to be in regard to getting it into people's arms, he said. And that's the end of this article. Now, on the subject of getting this vaccine into people's arms, of course, those of you who are with me in this broadcast right now, you're well aware of the fact that there has been mass hysteria. There has been a tremendous amount of argumentation in the public square via social media on all platforms over these vaccines that have been rolled out. A lot of controversy. I shared with my brothers and sisters who are connected with me on Facebook 2 or 3 weeks ago the fatwa that was released by the Assembly of Muslim Jurists Association, the Resident Fatwa Committee. This fatwa was released on December 13th, 2020. I'm going to once again, because repetition helps learning, I'm going to once again share just a part, the core piece of this fatwa, in my humble opinion, now, for the sake of this presentation, or the benefit of this presentation we're doing now. The fatwa opened with the question, what is the ruling on getting the COVID-19 coronavirus vaccine? Now, the salient points in AMJA's response to that question were the following. Again, these were the salient points. This is the summary conclusion, I would describe it as being, of this fatwa that was issued. The jurists said the preservation of life is of the highest objectives of Sharia, Islamic law. For it, Allah has permitted for someone who is compelled the consumption of carcasses and even the utterance of words of disbelief. Trivial things are excused, and we have been forbidden from being overly technical. Allah wants ease for his servants, not hardship, and he loves that his servants avail themselves of his concessions. Sometimes using them is preferable or even obligatory. Disease or fear of it warrants the making of concessions. This was one of the points that they wanted to, actually three of the points, back to back, three of the points that they wanted to emphasize. Another point, using a forbidden substance other than pure alcoholic beverage as medicine is permissible according to the majority, if it is the sole effective treatment. The vast majority of contemporary scholars adopt this position because of the clear benefits in modern medicines that approach certainty at times. The next point they wanted to emphasize was what is likelier is treated like what is certain, and what is imminent is treated like what is present. This means that which is likely to happen is given some of the rulings and concessions of that which is present. The basis of judgment in the matters of medicine is probability, not certainty, which is unattainable in most cases. There is no blame on physicians and researchers when they base their judgments on the greater likelihood. Al-Mardawi, may Allah bestow mercy on him, said, where we accept the judgment of the physician, then acting on the greater likelihood is sufficient, according to the correct position in the madhab. End quote. In general, when conflicting benefits and harms are intermixed, what is warranted is to procure the greater good and repel the greater harm. If some limited side effects are encountered with a particular medicine, they should be overlooked if the medicine's benefits outweigh the harm. Now, concerning the particular issue of the COVID-19 vaccine, the jurist wrote, it is a matter of great importance that goes beyond the interests of individuals to communal ones. To communal ones. And the community is represented in this respect by the public health institutions. It is known that the pandemic has so far affected over 70 million people worldwide and caused the deaths of more than 1.5 million of them. There is no way to stop this pandemic except by reaching herd mentality, which requires that around 70% of the people have immunity. This can be achieved through one of two ways. Number one, allowing the infection to spread among the people without curtailing it. Number two, vaccinating people against the virus. Now, they say the first way does not conform with the Sharia because it risks the lives of people, particularly the weak, which is in direct conflict with the intent of the legislator with regard to preserving all human lives. Its harm goes beyond the realm of public health to affect people's worship and livelihood and other aspects of their lives. And then they wrote here, there should be no harm and no reciprocation of harm. This is a foundational principle in Islam. The second way is through vaccination, which is congruent with the Sharia and reason. The permissibility of taking medicine to repel an existing disease or prevent an expected one is a matter of consensus among the people of knowledge. The point of contention is whether it is obligatory or not. And various fiqh councils have addressed this matter in detail. And one of the cases where taking medicine is obligatory is when the disease may harm others. This may apply to the case of COVID-19, which is extremely contagious. Now, I'm going to stop here on the reference to the Fatwa and move right along to the second major challenge confronting Muslims, in my humble opinion, a challenge that is so significant that I felt it necessary to include in this short presentation we're doing here today. And that is the issue of politics. I mentioned this at the Jummah on Friday. I'm mentioning it again to emphasize the point. Again, repetition is learning. Politics, electoral, racial, economic, and justice-related politics. Extremely important. Brothers and sisters, we have a responsibility, those of us who say we believe that there is a God, that there is a day of accountability, there is something called divine justice, and that we have accountability from the one who created us while we live in the here and now. This issue of politics is one that people of faith, of all faiths, irrespective of what creed you belong to, but especially Muslims, as the recipients of the final revelation to all of humanity, the Quran, we have a special obligation to give the appropriate type of attention to. Because none of us can escape politics, quote unquote. None of us can escape it. You are not officially born in the West and in most other parts of the world until a political bureaucrat signs off on your birth certificate. You have not officially died until a bureaucrat signs off on your death certificate. From birth to death, you are affected by a political system, whether you like it or not. And politics is something that we especially many of us Muslims here in America, we have got to mature fast at a rapid pace to an understanding of, so that we can negotiate within this required realm as Islamically as we possibly can, with as much principle as we possibly can. There is no escaping this responsibility. We have got to be relevant. We have got to be on point in our determinations. We have got to be guarded of our principles, because there will be a day of accountability. Most of our politicians today, most politicians, remind me of that interesting social theory of existence that a Mexican philosopher by the name of Antonio Caso had. Very interesting social theory of existence. Antonio Caso, he basically divided the whole of humanity into two categories. One he termed la existencia como economía, and the other la existencia como caridad. Existence as economy and existence as a charity. Those who fell under the first category, la existencia como economía, he said these are the majority of people in the world. These are human beings, many of whom will do good, but only after a careful calculation as to what benefit that good will be to them. Politicians, they exemplify this definition to the max. The vast majority of your politicians engage in a very careful calculus on what impact a righteous decision, a righteous judgment, a righteous position will have on them and their political fortunes. That's the way most politicians are. And I agree with this Mexican philosopher, Antonio Caso. From my years of observation on this planet and experience, I think that the vast majority of us fall under that category. But that second category is a most blessed category. La existencia como caridad. The existence as charity. You know, human beings like this, very beautiful souls, and they come in all shades and colors and, alhamdulillah, nationalities. I mean, you know, these are the human beings who, they're like the fruit-bearing trees in an orchard. If you don't pick the fruit off the tree, off of an apple tree or an orange tree or what have you, you know, once it ripens, if you don't pick it, it'll fall off. It'll fall to the ground. It has to give. It has to give. This is a blessed nature of some human beings. It's just their nature to give without thinking twice. Just want to give because it's the right thing to do. It's the good thing to do. It feels good. People of faith, people of conscience, we should be people aspiring to be like the people that fall under this latter category. I pray to Allah that before I die, I can be said to have fallen under that category. Still striving. But we need this. We need people of this nature, and we need people of courage, willing to buck up against the system because, subhanAllah, nothing will change unless we have people that are willing, for the sake of principle, for the sake of doing what is right, for the sake of wanting to commit whatever energy and whatever talent I have to making this world a better place for us all. We need people like this. And that brings me to the third challenge that I want to touch upon, which is a very huge challenge. And that is a challenge, and I'm speaking specifically now to my Muslim brothers and sisters, especially the challenge of political prisoners. And I want to reference a political prisoner specifically. And I want to be our point on point case study for the balance of this presentation. That political prisoner is Dr. Aafia Siddiqui. Brothers and sisters, today we are in a very unique and fertile position to do something substantive for this sister. And by extension, for ourselves. Now the question is, will we? Some brothers, a couple of brothers approached me about 2 weeks ago with a request for me to draft a petition for another petition for our sister Dr. Aafia Siddiqui, for another petition drive, a new campaign. And while I promised them I would, I took a little too long in getting around to it, and it was not intentional. It's just that I've been going through a lot of changes, some health-related challenges over the past couple of weeks that have been very intense. So anyway, the brothers ended up approaching someone else to do a petition when I took a little too long, and then they sent me the link to the petition for my review. One of the brothers did. And while I appreciate the effort that's been made, the petition that has been launched is woefully inadequate, in my humble opinion. Woefully inadequate. And that brings me to what I want to conclude this presentation today with. It's concerning our sister Aafia. Before getting to the nitty-gritty of what I have to say, I want to first point out something that came to my attention, and I'm glad that it did, just a couple of days ago, because it connects with this challenge that we have. It is the USCMO petition to the Biden administration. It opens up, and this was drafted on the 26th of December, the day after Christmas, the 26th of December, 2020, the U.S. Council of Muslim Organizations, known by its acronym USCMO, the largest Muslim American coalition of leading national, regional, and local community institutions, appreciate and welcome the incoming administration's pledge to support American Muslims by ending the Muslim ban on day one, including Muslims at every level of government, confronting racial and religious discrimination, and addressing issues important to our community and our neighbors. End quote. This is how it opens up. It goes on to say, in order to help the Biden administration advance justice for all, we encourage the administration to support and pursue the policy recommendations made by the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CARE. In its report, quote, Biden-Harris administration, the first 100 days, restoring the rights of American Muslims and advancing justice for all Americans. That's the title of the piece that was drafted by the Council on American Islamic Relations that the USCMO, the umbrella organization for all of the major Muslim organizations in the U.S., including CARE, wants to highlight. This is the opening, the introduction, I should say, to this petition to the incoming Biden administration. Now, this petition has several sections. I'm going to just share with you the title of each of the sections, and it's a very good read. It's a well done piece. Section number 1, inclusive representation of American Muslims in the federal government. Section number 2, criminal justice reform. And within the criminal justice reform section, they say, work with Congress to adopt and pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. And in the meantime, the administrative action to adopt as many of the Act's provisions as possible. Point number 3, or section number 3, defending constitutional rights in schools, workplace, and elsewhere. Section number 4, these are just the section titles. Working to combat COVID-19 and advancing healthcare access. Section number 5, ending national security overreach. Now, within this section, I want to highlight something. They wrote, end the FBI's use of informants to spy on or entrap American Muslims, especially mentally ill and otherwise vulnerable individuals. And then also they wrote in this section, close the United States military prison at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and ensure those detainees already cleared for release are repatriated, and those that remain in custody are provided due process and a day in court. It's a righteous call. Point number 6, or section number 6, ending bigoted and discriminatory immigration policies. And section number 7, supporting a progressive and transformative foreign policy. Now, these are the 7 sections of this well-written petition to the incoming Biden administration. It's well done. It's very well done. Inshallah ta'ala, I'm going to revisit it again with my brothers and sisters later in another broadcast in its entirety, along with my opinion. But for now, let me just simply say that while this is a well-crafted document, it is a well-crafted call to the incoming Biden-Harris administration for much-needed institutional reforms, it still comes far short of what it should be, of what it needs to be. And that brings me to another call for our sister Aafia Siddiqui. I Refuse to Condemn is a newly released, thought-provoking book by a good friend and brother in Islam in the UK, Dr. Asim Qureshi of the Cage organization. I strongly recommend this book. It's a very important read. It has a number of voices in it, essayists weighing in from different angles, and it is a thought-provoking and valuable read. The point that I want to make right now, vis-a-vis the title of this book and what that title represents, is the fact that Muslim on Muslim condemnation was one of the main psychological staples at the height of the so-called war on terrorism, right here in the United States of America. It was not unique to Britain and France and other so-called Western democracies. It was right here as well. Among other things, it was attended by an "I refuse to support" attitude. This psychological communal virus did a lot of damage to our community. Dr. Aafia, Siddiqui, and Imam Jamil, Abdullah, Al-Amin, the former H. Rap Brown, are only two of its victims. There are far too many to count. Aafia Siddiqui is now just 3 months shy of 18 years of unjust and brutal captivity. When I visited Pakistan for our sister in 2014, a frontline supporter of hers in Karachi, her home city, asked me to take back a message to his blood brother in America. His blood brother happens to be a very prominent Muslim leader in the United States. The message was, "What are you doing for Aafia?" That was the message that this brother in Pakistan wanted to convey to his brother in America. What are you doing for Aafia? This is a question we can ask of all of our Muslim leaders in the United States, both male and female. What are you doing for Aafia Siddiqui? There is a justifiable, and here comes the hook, brothers and sisters. For those of us who are wise enough to take it, here's the hook. There is an international uproar that is still going on over the Blackwater pardons. President Donald Trump pardoning the mass murderers of the Blackwater organization, that later changed its name to something else. Aafia Siddiqui never killed anyone. These soldiers committed mass murder of unarmed civilians in a prominent square in Iraq. And they were justifiably prosecuted, found guilty, and imprisoned. And this president just pardoned them. This is an opportunity for the outgoing Trump administration to do something positive and just on the international legal front. And we know that a character like Trump, falling squarely under the category of la existencia como economía, will not do anything for Aafia Siddiqui or for anyone else out of a spirit of altruism. Yet, he is reachable. There is the very possibility that this very unpredictable political animal will do what is unpredictable. This is an opportunity for Muslim American and Pakistani American Muslim individuals and organizations to step up to their long neglected responsibility on this burning issue. The White House petition drive, the 2016 White House petition drive that we spearheaded in 2016 as the Obama-Biden administration was coming to its conclusion. It produced well over 100,000 petitioners within a 30-day period. Well over 100,000 American petitioners in a 30-day period. Unfortunately, it had no effect on the outgoing administration. Now, however, we have a double-barreled shot at the apple once again. We have a highly controversial and unpredictable president on his way out, and a seasoned veteran of Washington politics in the winter of his life on the way in. This is an opportunity for truly committed Muslims who have the ear of either one of these administrations to make up for what wasn't done yesterday. Now, the question is, will the U.S. Council of Muslim Organizations, quote, the largest Muslim American coalition of leading national, regional, and local community institutions, along with all of its component parts, do the right thing this time around? Surely time will tell. Brothers and sisters, I have said all that I feel needs to be said, so we're going to end this broadcast a little earlier than we normally do on this Sunday. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this New Year's message reaches the hearts and minds of committed folk, both here and abroad. That those of you who may have been slightly stung by something that I had to say in this presentation will weather it and let it be a wake-up call for you to do the right thing. We don't have time to waste. We don't know what the condition of our sister is. And as I've said in the past, our sister Aafia Siddiqui, she is a litmus test for Muslims in America and for the Pakistani community, both here and in Pakistan. She is a litmus test for us all. Her case is so significant, it is so weighty, that if we can get some modicum of justice for this sister, it will have a ripple effect on many other cases that would otherwise not be able to see the light of day. We have an obligation, according to the Quran and the prophetic Sunnah. We cannot be fence sitters like we have been for almost 18 years on this case, over 20 years on the case of Imam Jamil Abdullah Al-Amin, and on years and years and years and years of consequence regarding many other cases involving so many other Muslims here in this country. Again, our posture, the posture of the mainstream Muslim organizations for the most part over the past 2 decades has not only been we are willing to condemn, but we are also willing to forget. We will not advocate. We will not raise our voices. We are in a very unique place and time right now. With the condition that this country is in, politically, socially, the tremendous emphasis that is being placed on justice-related issues. We are in a unique position right now to do what we should have done yesterday for this Muslim sister of ours, this Hafida of Quran, Aafia Siddiqui. Brothers and sisters, respected leaders, respected scholars of Islam, don't remain silent. Let's not waste the opportunity that we now have once again. Let us do the right thing. And on that note, I wish for the rest of your day to be a peaceful one, a fruitful one. Peace be unto you. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal Asr. Inna la insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amalu salihati. Wa tawasaw bil haqq. Wa tawasaw bis sabr. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, by the token of time through the ages, verily humanity is in loss, except those who believe and do good, and exhort one another to truth, and exhort one another to patiently persevere. Amen.